Life without children seems miserable. My daughter is both adorable and a genius, Kyle said with a smirk. Looking at his grinning face made me feel like my insides were boiling. This is after he casually approached me as if he had forgotten all the past mistreatment. There's no way I wouldn't be furious. Yet, I remembered the situation I was in and managed to quell my anger for the moment. I made an effort to appear as cheerful as possible and decided to retort to him. Even if he got angry at this, it would be nothing compared to what I had endured. I called out to my daughter, who was a little distance away, and with my chest puffed out, I said this. Well, let me introduce you to my daughter then. I'm probably wearing the smile I imagined. While showing that to him, I embraced Sarah as she ran up to me. Huh? He looked at us, surprised, his mouth agape, seemingly unable to close it. He probably couldn't accept the reality of me, whom he had looked down upon so much. Julie, who had been smirking just like him until a moment ago, also seemed unable to hide her surprise. Ignoring them, I turned to Sarah and began to speak. My name is Alexis, a 51-year-old office worker. People are often surprised when I tell them I have a daughter who is 12. It's true that I married late, but there are various reasons for that. Actually, I'm divorced, and I didn't have any children at that time. I met Kyle, my then husband, in a setup that was somewhat like a blind date. A friend who was worried about me, always working and not getting married, arranged a mixer for me. At that event, Kyle took a fancy to me, and I received a relentless pursuit from him. Even so, initially I wasn't really into it, feeling hesitant about his liking. Even though I wasn't initially interested, his enthusiasm gradually won me over. As a result, we started dating, and soon after, we got married. After marriage, Kyle, who was keen on having children, was serious about trying to conceive. However, being in my late 30s at the time, I felt an undue amount of pressure. Whether that was the cause or not, we struggled to have children. Gradually, his attitude towards me cooled, and he eventually began to look down on me. What's up, Baron? Were you here? Did you pick up the dry cleaning I asked for before? He called me Baron and treated me as though I were a servant. This made me incredibly frustrated, and I desperately sought a solution. I went to the hospital, fearing the worst, but even after thorough tests, there was nothing wrong with my body. It might even be stress-related, I was told, leaving me feeling hopeless. I tried everything, from watching my diet to trying supplements. Despite all my efforts, I never got pregnant. At this point, I suggested to Kyle that the problem might not be mine and encouraged him to get tested. Kyle, I went to the hospital, and there was nothing wrong. So, there might be a chance that. I think you should get tested too. When I suggested that, Kyle immediately turned red with anger and started yelling. What? Are you saying there's something wrong with me? It's just that you can't get pregnant, don't doubt me. But I don't have any issues, and I've been continuing treatment. If we still can't have a child, the only explanation could be that there's something wrong with you. That's impossible. I've always been fine. The problem has to be with you, there's no way it's me. He adamantly refused my suggestion, insisting the problem was mine. At first, I kept arguing back, but it's hard to keep that up when he kept blaming me. Gradually, my spirit was worn down, and it finally broke after one of his remarks. What's the point of being a woman if you can't even have kids? I couldn't respond to that comment, said in such a dismissive tone. Not because I agreed with his words. Rather, it was because I was shocked by why I had to be told all this. I was working while taking care of the house and doing my best to support Kyle, who was also working. I never expected to be so thoroughly dismissed just because I couldn't have children. Once my spirit was broken, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to get tested again. The fear of hearing those words again kept me from speaking out. Sensing this, Kyle began to order me around even more. I'm tired. I don't want the usual beer today, I feel like having the cocktail sold at the liquor store in front of the station. Hey. Since you're useless and can't even get pregnant, you must be free. Go buy it for me now. He laughed mockingly, treating me like a mere errand runner. Any sign of protest from me would only draw more verbal abuse. Despite that, I endured everything, simply trying to get through each day. You might think I should have just gotten a divorce already. But I married late, and I thought this was my last chance to get married. Additionally, I was embarrassed by the idea of getting divorced and couldn't take that step. As time passed without a way to change things, I turned 38. At that point, the situation took a dramatic turn. Even then, I continued working and enduring the relentless infertility taunts almost daily. Hey, you should at least know what I hate by now. There's no way I can eat something this awful. This is why infertile people. That day, after being taunted like that, I couldn't hold back any longer and snapped back. What does dinner have to do with not being able to have kids? I can't take this anymore. Enough is enough. Hearing this, Kyle sprang up as if triggered and started yelling at me furiously. What's with that tone? As a woman, you can't even fulfill your role, and now you're complaining to me when I come home from work. Suddenly, I was bombarded with a barrage of nonsensical complaints, and I lost my temper. What do you mean by a woman's role? If it's about having children, you have a responsibility too. I got tested and there was nothing wrong with me. But you refused to get tested, avoiding the responsibility you should be taking. Yet, you keep blaming me, which I think is completely unfair. He seemed a bit flustered by my rare retort. But he quickly resumed his verbal abuse. Why are you so stubborn? If it were her, she would have quickly reflected and apologized. At his words, it was my turn to freeze. Before I could ask who her was, he made a face as if realizing his mistake. Then he turned away and left the house without a word. He didn't come home that day, and I grew suspicious. From his tone, it was clear there was another woman involved. This meant he might be cheating, which could lead to a divorce. Not because I couldn't have children, but because of his infidelity. With this in mind, I immediately took action. I searched online for a detective agency nearby and made a request. About Kyle, who seemed to be cheating recently. I decided to have them investigate the woman he was seeing and his behavior. A few weeks after making the request, the detective agency delivered the results to me. During this time, he would come home but avoided eye contact with me. It seemed like he was avoiding me, and the verbal abuse that had been so constant had stopped. Surprised by how comfortably I was managing, I regretted not taking action sooner. If only I had done this earlier. While such thoughts crossed my mind, I looked at the report from the detective agency. The report contained the fact that he was cheating and the evidence for it. It also included a report about the person he was cheating with. Her name was Julie. She was 23 years old, naturally younger than both of us. It seemed that they started their affair soon after I first asked him to get tested. That means he must have been cheating for the past few years. Filled with sudden anger upon realizing this, I decided to proceed with the divorce. During my preparations, he was unusually quiet. This allowed me to steadily progress with my preparations, and finally, I decided to confront him with a divorce. Kyle, we need to talk. It's not about the test, it's something more important. Upon hearing this, Kyle, who had just returned from work, made a displeased face. What now? I have something to tell you too. Make it quick. Kyle, clearly annoyed but still listening, fiddled with his phone. I quickly presented the detective's report before he could change his mind. You've been cheating. I had it thoroughly investigated, so there's no escaping the truth. Between the child issue and your affair, I can't take it anymore. Let's get a divorce. With that, I also presented a partially filled out divorce paper as a sign of my resolve. However, instead of panicking, he smirked and took the divorce paper from my hand. Well, aren't you prepared? Such timing makes me question your precognitive abilities. As he fiddled with his phone, the door opened with a click. Hello, sorry to intrude. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Julie, going to marry Kyle soon. The person who entered was the woman from the detective's report photos. Julie, appearing even younger and cuter than in her photos, greeted me with a grin. I was actually planning to introduce you to her today. I never imagined you'd prepare the divorce papers yourself. If you were always this considerate, I might have reconsidered, but it's too late now. Saying this half-jokingly, Kyle, holding the divorce papers, walked into the living room. Taken aback by the sudden turn of events, I was left frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Shortly after, he emerged from the living room with the completed divorce papers. And then, while thrusting the divorce papers at me, he said with a smirk, "This saves us a lot of trouble. Now that we're no longer husband and wife, please leave immediately. Julie is pregnant. And I want to make sure she's as stress-free as possible." Faced with their malicious grins, I lost all composure. Snatching the divorce papers from him, I rushed to my room. Then, without saying a word, I left the house with my belongings already packed. 13 years later, I was visiting a completed project I had been involved in. As a specialist consultant, I had been tasked with designing a disaster-resistant and family-friendly condominium. After being introduced to Julie by Kyle, I took refuge in a nearby business hotel. Waiting for dawn, I submitted the divorce papers to the courthouse and hopped from one business hotel to another. After a while, I moved to an apartment and devotedly carried out my work. Post-divorce, my work progressed smoothly, possibly due to a lighter spirit, leading to more business opportunities and networking. Thanks to that, I was brimming with energy and was appointed as the project leader for a certain project. It turned out to be this urban development, which, after a long haul, had finally been completed, leaving me relieved. With a small event being held, the place was bustling with people. Then, I heard a familiar, unwelcome voice. "Hey, long time no see. Still all by yourself? I came to buy a condo here that can accommodate a family of 3. But, that's none of your concern, I guess." Turning towards the voice, I immediately regretted it. Where I shifted my gaze, there were Kyle and Julie. Standing with them was the daughter who, at that time, must have been in her belly. Life without children seems miserable. "My daughter is both adorable and a genius," he said with a smirk. Looking at his grinning face made me feel like my insides were boiling. This is after he casually approached me as if he had forgotten all the past mistreatment. There's no way I wouldn't be furious. Yet, I remembered the situation I was in and managed to quell my anger for the moment. I made an effort to appear as cheerful as possible and decided to retort to him. Even if he got angry at this, it would be nothing compared to what I had endured. I called out to my daughter, who was a little distance away, and with my chest puffed out, I said this. "Well, let me introduce you to my daughter then. I'm probably wearing the smile I imagined." While showing that to Kyle, I embraced Sarah as she ran up to me. "Huh?" Kyle looked at us, surprised, his mouth agape, seemingly unable to close it. He probably couldn't accept the reality of me, whom he had looked down upon so much. Julie, who had been smirking just like Kyle until a moment ago, also seemed unable to hide her surprise. Ignoring them, I turned to Sarah and began to speak. "Did you find a place you wanted to shoot?" When I asked this, she smiled brightly and nodded. "I want to shoot in front of that flower bed you were so particular about until the very end." She pointed to the flower bed and ran towards it with the equipment that was placed beside me. As I watched her tomboyish figure running off, Julie screamed. "Was that the popular YouTuber, Sally? How come she's calling you a mom?" Hearing her words, even Kyle and Julie's daughter, who had always looked down on me, opened her mouth. It really is her. Wow, I've never met the real deal before. "Hey, lady, can I get an autograph?" "That's a great idea, Jessica. You really are a genius." Their arrogant manner made me marvel at the fact that they were indeed mother and child. I shrugged my shoulders in resignation and made it clear that I was declining. "Sorry, but no. My daughter enjoys posting videos voluntarily. She loves shooting and editing videos, not for the sake of becoming famous. She has become well known, but that's not her goal. Come on, it wouldn't hurt. Plus, my daughter is a genius." A combination of a popular YouTuber and a genius would make a great story. Listening to Kyle proudly proclaim his daughter as a genius, I asked, despite feeling fed up. "What exactly makes your daughter a genius?" "So far, I've only seen a lack of common sense and rude behavior." "Oh, what are you saying?" "Jessica is going to attend a very famous private middle school and become a big shot." I wanted to see concrete examples of her genius. But Julie's claims lacked specifics, making me sigh in exasperation. Seeing my reaction, Kyle, perhaps disliking my attitude, began bragging about Jessica even more. Jessica, you see, never sticks with anything for long. She's too much of a genius and masters everything quickly, which makes her lose interest. She's tried many hobbies, but outgrew them all. It's tough having a genius for a child. Listening to his non-bragging brag, I finally became annoyed. Without responding much to his boasting, I moved towards where Sarah was filming. Kyle and Julie seemed to be saying something behind me, but I ignored them and approached her. Sarah, how's the shooting going? Let's go to a cafe when you're done. A crowd had gathered around her, watching her film. Some had recognized her as Sally and were quite excited. I just need to shoot the ending, and then I'll be done. Hang on a little longer. She, smiling, waved to the people around her before starting to shoot the final scene. Hey, Sally. Let me be in the shoot with you. Jessica, not reading the room, interrupted the shoot at an inconvenient time. Noticing this, Sarah smiled at Jessica and then resumed filming. After finishing the shoot, Sarah was immediately surrounded by onlookers. They, like Jessica, requested autographs, but Sarah politely declined. Instead, she happily chatted and interacted with those who had approached her. She continued her activities because she enjoyed them, not because she wanted to become famous. She's become famous, but she never lets it go to her head. Of course, she doesn't even think about things like autographs, so that's not an option. In that case, she believes it's nice to communicate a bit as a way of returning the favor to those who approach her. That's how she decides to act. Earlier, Sarah was approached by Jessica, but deep down, Sarah probably wasn't thrilled about being disturbed during her shoot. However, Sarah gently refused without showing her annoyance, but it's questionable whether Jessica understood that. After finishing conversations with most people, Sarah was about to head home. As expected, Jessica, who hadn't caught on to Sarah's intentions, called out to her. Great job on the shoot. Next time, let's shoot together. Seeing Sarah stare at Jessica in astonishment, I couldn't stand by and intervened. Sorry, but Sarah doesn't collaborate. That smile earlier was just being polite to you for interrupting the shoot. What's that, just lip service? Starting to learn such things so young, weren't raised well, were you? Julie, who sarcastically stepped in, looked down on Sarah with crossed arms. In response, Sarah's face tensed for a moment, but she remained silent and didn't retort to Julie. Julie, feeling triumphant, snorted and pressed Sarah even further. So you're saying Jessica isn't worth shooting with? Despite appearances, she is a genius who can do anything. It would actually be a chance to boost your own value, you know? Maybe you should be more aware of your surroundings. At this point, Sarah, not knowing how to respond, looked at me for help. I sighed and retorted to Julie. Enough already. You keep calling your daughter a genius, but there's not a single concrete example. Winning awards isn't everything. But don't you have any more substantial bragging rights? As I said this, the people around us listening in agreed. Julie's face soured under their words, but Jessica didn't seem to care. Instead, she puffed out her chest proudly and started flaunting her achievements. I got a certificate at a piano recital for practicing well. And at dance school too, for being able to dance a whole song. Plus, I've received perfect attendance awards at school. I've been honored so much. Jessica is probably around Sarah's age. Sarah is now 12, so Jessica might even be in middle school. Considering this, her statement seemed somewhat awkward. Unaware of this, Jessica beamed, as if seeking praise. Sarah and I exchanged looks, only able to make troubled faces. The people around us seemed to feel the same, with some even bursting into laughter. At this point, even Julie seemed to catch on to the mood and desperately tried to change the subject. So, anyway. You're active in all this, but how much do you earn? I doubt it's enough to live in this condo, right? Despite the desperate question, wanting to avoid revisiting the previous atmosphere, I decided to respond. Thankfully, we're quite popular on the video sharing platform. Of course, we're earning money. But we're saving it for Sarah's future and spending it on necessities for shooting. Sure, this condo is attractive, but we own a house. So it's unnecessary. Besides, I created this place, so the success reward is considerable. My current husband runs a company. And combining that income, moving here wouldn't be too bad. I spilled everything Julie might want to know, all at once. As expected, Julie's face soured, glaring at me and Sarah. Even Kyle, having heard my story, seemed impressed and unable to argue. But Julie, ever strong-willed, started to ingratiate herself with me, who she had been openly hostile towards. So, you created this place. Then, a word from you, and we could live here, right? Our kids are about the same age. Think of it as a kindness and help us out? I couldn't understand what she found kindness, but in any case, I wouldn't nod in agreement. Just as I was about to firmly decline, Jessica, misunderstanding something, sparkled her eyes and asked. If I ask the lady, can we live in this condo? Hey, ma'am. We want to live in this condo. Please help us out. Hearing her words, I sighed deeply in utter disbelief. And to finally make it clear, I decided to explain the reality. Sorry, but it's uncertain if you can live in this condo. I might introduce you to the management company through my connections here. But you'll need to pass a screening. They'll look at what job you have, how much you earn, and if you have potential, among other things. I'm not in charge of the screening, so it's not guaranteed you can live here. It's up to you, so good luck. Julie clicked her tongue upon hearing my words, while she didn't seem to fully grasp the situation. However, Kyle then interjected, imposing an unreasonable demand on me. My daughter is asking, so make it happen. If you have the connections from creating this place, then get us through the screening. His absurd demand caused murmurs among the bystanders. I pondered how to explain this obvious fact while feeling a headache coming on. It's impossible for me to intervene in the screening process. That's entirely beyond my control. If you want to live here, you'll need to overcome it with your own efforts. When I said that, Kyle, blood rushing to his head, suddenly started to rage. He began ripping out the flowers from a nearby flower bed and throwing them at me. I stood in front of Sarah to shield her from the flying debris while trying to calm Kyle down. But for some reason, Julie and others took Kyle's lead and began doing the same. Julie hurled insults and flowers at us, while Jessica spat harsh words at Sarah. I was protecting Sarah, but the people around us stepped in to try to stop them. Despite this, Kyle and his group wouldn't listen and continued to throw whatever they could find. Julie picked up a stone from nearby and raised it threateningly. I grabbed Julie's arm to stop her, worried she might hit Sarah, but Julie, caught up in her momentum, pushed me away. I stumbled into the flower bed and hit my head. Seeing this, the people around us condemned Julie and her group even more, desperately trying to stop them. However, the trio, becoming even more enraged, continued their rampage until they were eventually restrained. It's unclear who called, but the police arrived, having heard the commotion. Who the hell called the cops? Kyle shouted as he was restrained by the police, but no one responded. Julie was also pinned down by the officers, trying to find out who had called them, just like Kyle. Jessica had stopped her tantrum, but upon seeing her parents restrained by the police, she began to cry. In the midst of the chaos, a loud voice from a police officer rang out. You are under arrest for obstructing the execution of public duties. At those words, the scene fell silent in an instant. It seemed Kyle had lashed out at a police officer and was now being arrested on the spot. I held my head, watching the scene unfold, holding back tears, as Sarah hugged me, crying. As Kyle was led away, Julie and Jessica were also taken to the police station. The three of them were put into a police car and driven away, disappearing from sight. Despite the commotion they caused, seeing them taken away by the police so easily left me feeling deflated. But Sarah's concerned voice brought me back to reality, even though she was on the verge of tears herself. Mom, you're hurt. Should we go to the hospital? Otherwise, Mom, you will. Overwhelmed by the recent uproar, Sarah finally broke down in tears. I held her close, apologizing for involving her in all this. People around me started talking to me, expressing their concern. While I did feel some pain, knowing Sarah was safe made it all seem insignificant. Every time someone asked, I reassured them I was fine, until we heard the siren of an ambulance. Apparently, someone had called for an ambulance as well. As the ambulance arrived, the police officers helped us aboard for transportation to the hospital. As we got into the ambulance, I looked back at the flower bed, now ruined. The large condo's construction had an imposing presence. Wanting to mitigate that, we established a park within the premises and installed flower beds there. I hoped the park would become a place of relaxation and that the flowers would encourage conversations. I met my current husband in a certain park after my divorce from Kyle. I was taking a break from work, admiring the flower beds in the park, when he struck up a conversation. From there, I started talking to my current husband, who worked near the park, and we became close. Our relationship blossomed from casual meetings during lunch breaks to dinners and eventually led to marriage. Sometime later, we were blessed with Sarah. Despite being a late pregnancy, it was a smooth delivery. That park, with its flower beds, brought us happiness. So, in the projects I worked on, I wanted to create opportunities for others to find their happiness, just like I did. That was the idea behind those flower beds. Seeing them destroyed saddened me deeply and was a great shock. Upon arriving at the hospital, I was treated and received a few stitches. However, it's hardly noticeable by appearance, so that's a relief. Seeing this, Sarah too felt relieved and even managed to smile on our way home from the hospital. While waiting to pay, I was interviewed by a police officer and decided to file a report of the incident. I decided to hire a lawyer to ensure Kyle and his family received proper punishment for their actions. Thanks to this, Julie was arrested as the assailant in an assault case. According to what I heard from the lawyer, Jessica was taken in by Julie's parents after both her parents became involved with the police. I thought that was sad enough, but what awaited Jessica was a re-education from her grandparents. Jessica, who was taken in by her grandparents, seems to have been severely reprimanded for her usual behavior. And being still young, it appears she was subjected to strict discipline to reform her. It seems that not only Kyle and Julie but also Jessica is facing tough times ahead. As for me, my recovery from the injury has been smooth since then. I've had the stitches removed recently, so there's no significant injury anymore. Since that day, Sarah has become even more popular and has been keeping busy. It turns out, the person who called the police and ambulance was one of Sarah's followers. After finishing the shoot, sensing the brewing trouble, Sarah quickly switched to live streaming. Thanks to that, when things escalated into a major brawl, it seems one of my followers took action. Thanks to that, we were able to resolve the situation quickly, and we're truly grateful for that. Later, Sarah wanted to thank the person responsible, so she called for them to come forward in a video. However, no one came forward, so I decided to give another thank you video. When we went to the park to film that video, we found the flower bed beautifully restored. It seems that volunteers had fixed it up after the incident, which was a relief. Since then, things have been going surprisingly well. Building that condominium led to an increase in my professional reputation. Thanks to that, I was promoted and now serve as the head of the planning department. Sarah's video views have skyrocketed, and she continues to post content happily. My current husband is very attentive to us and quite concerned. Although my injury has healed and no longer hinders my daily life, he still occasionally worries about its condition. Having such a kind-hearted husband by my side and our daughter, Sarah, growing up healthy is a blessing. Since both my work and family life are flourishing, there's no problem at all. I hope to continue spending happy times with my family of 3 like this.